in the heart of Kingston, Jamaica, where the rhythm of reggae pulses through the streets and the air is thick with the scent of jerk chicken. A young boy named Daniel discovered his love for running. It wasn't just a sport for him, it was a language. The steady beat of his feet on the sun-baked track was his way of speaking, of expressing the fire that burned within him. From a young age, everyone could see he was special. His legs were long and powerful. His stride was effortless, and he moved with a grace that seemed to defy gravity. Coaches watched him, their eyes wide with a mix of awe and excitement. "That boy," they'd whisper, "he's got the gift." Daniel lived and breathed running. Every morning before the sun even thought about rising, he was out on the dew-kissed grass of Emancipation Park, his breath misting in the cool air. He trained with a relentless determination, pushing his body to its limits and then a little further. His room wasn't filled with toys, but with posters of Jamaican track legends. He studied their form, their race strategies, their stories of triumph. He wanted to be just like them. He wanted to feel the weight of a gold medal around his neck and hear the roar of the crowd chanting his name. The dream was so vivid, he could almost taste it. His early years were a whirlwind of success. He dominated local school meets, his name becoming a regular headline in the community sports pages. With each victory, the expectations grew, not just from his coaches and family, but from within himself. The whispers of the next big thing followed him everywhere. He was no longer just Daniel, the boy who loved to run. He was Daniel, the future champion, the one who carried the hopes of his community on his young shoulders. And for a while, he soared on the wings of that pressure, using it as fuel to run faster and train harder. But as Daniel entered his teenage years, a shadow began to creep into his mind. It started small, a fleeting thought during a tough practice session. Am I really good enough? The competition was getting fiercer. The other boys were bigger, stronger, and just as hungry for victory. At a major national junior championship, a race he was heavily favored to win, something snapped as he stood at the starting line. The roar of the crowd, which once energized him, now sounded like a deafening wave of pressure. The starting gun fired, and his legs felt like lead. He finished, but not in first place, not even in second or third. That race was a turning point. The once unshakable confidence he had was now fractured. The shadow of doubt grew larger, twisting his passion into a source of anxiety. He started overthinking every step, every breath. Practices became a battleground, not against his opponents, but against the critical voice in his own head. Your start was too slow. You're losing your form. You'll never be as good as them. The joy he once found in the simple act of running was replaced by a gnawing fear of failure. He'd stand at the starting line, his heart pounding not with excitement, but with dread. The track, once his sanctuary, now felt like a stage 4, potential humiliation. His performance suffered. He was still fast, but the spark was gone. He was running with his body, but not with his heart. His coach, a wise old runner named Mr. Ben, saw the change. He'd seen this kind of struggle countless times before. He knew that the biggest hurdle for any athlete wasn't on the track, but in the 6 inches between their ears. One afternoon, after a particularly frustrating practice where Daniel stormed off the track, Mr. Ben didn't scold him. Instead, he simply sat beside him on the bleachers. For a long time, they sat in silence, listening to the city sounds around them. Then, Mr. Ben finally spoke, his voice calm and steady. "Daniel," he said, "I'm not going to tell you to just be more confident. That's like telling someone to just be taller. It doesn't work that way. Confidence isn't something you just have. It's something you build, one brick at a time." He went on to explain that confidence doesn't come from never failing. It comes from knowing you can handle failure. It's not about winning every race, but about the courage to show up at the starting line, again and again, especially after you've lost. Mr. Ben introduced a new kind of training. Yes, they still did the sprints and the endurance runs, But now they added mental exercises. He had Daniel visualize his races, not just the perfect ones, but the tough ones. He taught him to focus on the feeling of his feet hitting the ground, the rhythm of his breathing, the wind on his skin, to be present in the moment, instead of lost in his worries about the outcome. He encouraged Daniel to keep a journal, to write down not just his times, but his feelings. What was he proud of today? What did he learn from a difficult moment? Slowly, brick by brick, Daniel began to rebuild. It wasn't a magical, overnight transformation. There were still days filled with doubt, practices that ended in frustration. But now he had the tools to deal with it. He learned to acknowledge the negative thoughts without letting them take control. He started to see his competitors not as threats, but as fellow athletes who pushed him to be better. He began to rediscover the simple joy of running, the feeling of freedom and power as his body moved across the earth. He wasn't just running against the clock anymore. He was running with himself. The day of the national championships arrived again, a year after his devastating loss. The air was electric. The stands were packed. As Daniel walked towards the starting blocks, the old whispers of doubt tried to surface. But this time, something was different. He took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and focused on the familiar feeling of the track beneath his spikes. He didn't think about winning or losing. He thought about the journey, the long months of training, the lessons from Mr. Ben, the rediscovery of his love for the sport. He thought about the boy who used to run through Emancipation Park just for the sheer joy of it. When the starting gun fired, he didn't explode off the blocks in a panic. He moved with a controlled, powerful grace. He ran his own race, focused on his own lane, his own rhythm. He could hear the thundering footsteps of his rivals, feel them pushing the pace. In the final stretch, he was neck and neck with the reigning champion. The old Daniel would have tensed up, choked under the pressure. But the new Daniel dug deep, not into a well of fear, but into a reservoir of self-belief he had so painstakingly built. He leaned into the finish line, his lungs burning, his legs screaming. He didn't know if he had won. For a moment, it didn't even matter. The feeling of crossing that line, having given everything he had, was a victory in itself. Then, he saw his name flash on the giant screen. First place, a new national record. The crowd erupted, a tidal wave of sound, but amidst the chaos, Daniel felt a profound sense of calm. He had won the race, yes, but more importantly, he had won the battle within himself. The gold medal they placed around his neck was heavy, but it was nothing compared to the weight of doubt he had finally lifted from his own shoulders. He had found his confidence, not at the finish line, but on the long, difficult path it took to get there. Thank you so much for watching. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content that inspires and uplifts. Remember, the biggest races are often the ones we run inside our own minds. See you in the next one.